Check. Levels. I'm too loud.
Hello.
Levels. Level. No. That's not Rebel, is it? How does Rebel go? Is that Rebel?
Rebel, turn your dress. Rebel, your face is a mess.
That'll do. We'll start from there.
Hot tramp! I love you so.
Alright?
Do you want more?
No. We're outside for the first time. That cobweb has fallen into my hot chocolate.
Well, just count yourself lucky. That's a little gift for today. Best thing about your day. When you're reflecting before you go to bed about your best bit,
And my
your
worst
tricky
bit.
The best
Oh,
bit
the
would
tricky
be
bit,
the
yeah.
cobweb falling into your hot chocolate.
Yeah. Outdoor food hygiene.
We're slurping. We were like, oh, it's warm enough to podcast outside.
We haven't done it outside for ages. Let's go outside.
The sun is shining and the birds are singing and it's spring. And then we sat down and had a meeting with a nice lady about helping our local river deal with climate change. And it was very fascinating.
It was, but you sit still and you go, oh, it's cold, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is actually cold. It's still, just, I'm looking at the parachute now and going, it's not completely still, but it's still, relatively speaking, isn't it? Because my brain now has adjusted to, well, it's under 30 miles an hour, so that's basically no wind at all.
It's just an okay day.
It's not got a name.
We don't need to close.
It's fine. But we are now holding hot chocolate to keep our hands warm.
And my hand has got a mystery wound, which I think is just, it's so cold.
Wound is a strong word for a tiny
it's so
nick
cold.
on your hand.
My hands have started to bleed.
It was a big slurp, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It's going to be quite
It's all
a
gone in my
slurpy
beard.
episode, I think.
It's alright, they're all pretty sloppy.
We're talking today about Playwork and forest school.
As a concept. We have been interested in Playwork for a long time, and I say a long time, a few years, and we have got involved in our local playworking networks, and I think we've both read a fair few books on playworking.
But
and
it's worth saying that we haven't had any specific training in Playwork, and that is not for want of trying. I have tried since I got involved in forest school. As soon as
trying to leave me.
No, I'm not. I wanted to.
It's only for lack of opportunity.
So I think, literally 6 months into my forest school journey, I was like, right, I'm really, really interested in play, and this job is all about play, isn't it? You cannot get away with it. Whether or not you align yourself with Playwork or call yourself a Playworker or whatever, it is a lot about play. And so I desperately, like my level 3 didn't happen to have anything on play. It was sort of like, oh yeah, you'll need to write about this in your coursework, so go away and research it yourself.
Ta-ra.
So I did, and then and scrabbling around, I was like, I really want to do some training on this, and could not find a course for love nor money. There were some ones that just looked like rubbishy kind of online joke things where you were sort of throwing your money into the ether and maybe getting a few resources for it. And then I sort of became aware of this more political nature where Playwork qualifications have been closing down left, right and centre, along with adventure playgrounds, and it's worth saying at this point that there is quite a lot of there's some testy areas in the kind of Playwork forest school.
Should we say tribalism?
Yeah, you could call it that. And sort of historically, where Playwork has been well funded in the past and has had its pedagogy and ethos taken up by government, both nationally and locally, and been invested in and valued, and play workers have been, have had jobs with pay and their skills acknowledged. That has all but gone, and there's these pockets of people working really hard and trying and fighting to keep their provision running and to keep their skills alive, basically. And
I think it would be the same. The same would happen to a lot of the forest school community. If forest school fell out of fashion tomorrow, a lot of us would still go, well, I'm still going to do forest school. If you need me to call it X, then I'm going to call it X. If we would still go, this is what I believe in, and so I'm going to keep doing it in a school if they call it foresty time or outdoor time. And that's kind of what a lot of forest school, a lot of playworking projects have either moved into maybe by hook or by crook, and that understandably is going to leave some people feeling a bit frustrated, maybe. And
the reason that we're kind of doing this podcast, or one of the reasons that we decided to talk about this now, I mean, we've talked about stuff like Bob Hughes' books.
Yeah, we talked about it in passing, haven't we? But not.
We've done like episodes on books on Playwork, haven't we?
Yeah, we did the Playworking. Yeah, Bob Hughes. Was it Bob Hughes' book?
Yeah. Evolutionary Playwork, and I talked about play types and stuff. But there was just a bit of beef that happened on.
You went on the internet.
On the old. I went on the internet, and I happened to make. So somebody had posted a poster for a conference that we're going to go to later in the year, and said, "How come there are no Playwork names on this conference list?" And then some people replied going, "Oh, what exactly is a Playwork name? Like, how old do you have to be? How much experience do you have to be? What gender do you have to be?
How pure does your Playwork have
to be?
You
know, all this kind of stuff." And then lots of people pointed, "I'm a Playworker and I'm going, blah, blah, blah." And I just said, "Oh, we're going." And I very intentionally didn't put "we are Playworkers" because I know there is a lot of like ownership of that phrase, and we're not Playwork trained. We just happen to run our. We've made the decision to run our forest school provision along Playwork principles as much as possible. And so I said, we're going and we're Playworky types, And then cue this like bombardment of, "Oh, I've looked at their website," as if I wasn't there. "Oh, it's just, Bear Grylls-y rubbish, they're hippies in the woods, avoid them, blah, blah, blah."
How dare you? We're
and
hippies
so
in a forest.
I was like, "Oh, okay, I've not experienced this level of animosity online before." And then that also then prompted a new post on the same group, which began like, "Forest School has always been a parasite on Playwork," and blah, blah, blah. So that was really kind of thought-provoking, and
to reflect on it.
Yeah, reflect on it,
Good
have a
practice.
little look, go back to the Playwork principles and discuss kind of any overlaps and differences between Forest School and Playwork. And, if like me, your level 3, if you have a level 3, didn't touch on Playwork at all, then this might be something that might be of interest to you.
Might spark your interest. You might get to the end of it and go, "Do you know what? Actually, I'm pretty sure Forest School's where it's at." You might go, "Oh, maybe I'll pull a few of those ideas into my Forest School," or you might go, "Oh, do you know what? Sod Forest School. I'm going to push back, and we might inspire some people to reignite a playworking movement."
Yeah, and
Who
we were going to
knows?
say, like, our local play forum is Somerset. Like, I think lots of counties do have them, but they're often quite hard to find, so you have to kind of like go down some wormholes and rabbit holes in the internet for a bit, and but when you find them, they are little communities which are advocating for play, sharing skills, and holding kind of forums to.
And I think that is one of the things where we talk quite often about. We have an advantage that we are completely independent. And it's the two of us, so we've got advantage, and we don't have our own space, and we've got these. But I do think for those people in schools, one of the advantages that you get is that when you start working at a school, you also get into those schools' networks, and that is a thing where. A playworking forum might contact a school or a nursery and say, "Did you know this event is going on?" in a way that they don't tend to contact independent Forest School and go, "Hey, I imagine nobody sort of out of the gates would go, I bet those guys are really interested in early years curriculum for 3 to 5-year-olds and do whatever." But we are, and it's just like you say, finding those networks when you're independent or self-employed or whatever else can be more tricky.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, and that is part of the problem that I'm sure playworkers, if they are pure playworkers, face, is that you can do EYFS provision. You can do that without touching on the Playwork principles at all. Or you can do it and completely embed that ethos in your practice and be involved in loads of local networks and communities and define yourself through that. But it seems kind of completely optional, even though there is loads in the UFS about play. It's just not as defined, I guess.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.
It's sort of mixed in with all the other.
Well, I think we'll go into it in a minute because we've got the playworking principles here in front of me, and you've got the Forest School principles in front of you, and we thought we'd maybe go down the playworking principles from. I'm looking at Play Scotland. Now,
Play Wales, Play England, all have these on there.
Yeah, we just said before we started recording, I don't rate Play England as highly as I rate the resources from Play Wales and Play Scotland. I don't know why that is. I'd be interested if anybody knows the history of why Play England is not
I think it has had less investment, and it's had less. This is my feeling.
Okay.
I feel like Play Wales. Again,
Play Wales is interesting though, because Scotland is, I feel like, a more separate government, and they have a lot more projects, and their school system is very different to ours, and you know, they've got a lot that I look at and go, oh, I like a lot of those principles.
Yeah.
But Wales is a little bit more connected. You know, I know Wales has its own parliament and stuff, but you know, I mean, apologies for anyone that's Welsh.
And I think it's also worth saying that I think, again, not speaking as a qualified play worker, but I think there is some, a bit like with the FSA in forest school community, there are some people in the Playwork community who would disagree with these, debate them, have issue with Playwork principles being put down in this way. So,
but we needed a resource to look at and to go, if you want to look at them yourself, it's playscotland.org. Actually, I wanted to start with, further up on this page, there's a really nice summary. So it said, what is Playwork? It says, the theory and practice of Playwork recognises that children's play must be freely chosen, personally driven and intrinsically motivated.
I love that. And I came across that sentence early on in our forest school career. I was like, that basically nails it. And if you are having a discussion with a parent or a fellow adult working with children, and you have some kind of point of debate, or kind of like, oh, should we be letting them do that, or should we be making them do this, and all these kind of things, and that is one of those sentences that I come back and go, well, are we adhering to that?
Is it meeting those things is it freely chosen?
Yeah.
Is it personally driven? Is it intrinsically motivated?
Yeah. So if you, sorry to interrupt.
No, go on.
But if you're getting those kind of accusations that, well, or kind of comments that we might get through forest school about, but what are they actually learning?
It's just playing.
They're just playing outside. And like, yeah, they are, and it's really blooming important. And here is, you know, and this type of play. It's not like, oh, we're playing by doing a craptivity and all sitting around together, and you must all sit down now.
We've all played football
and make make a caterpillar with googly eyes, because you have to do that now.
It's interesting as well if you again went through a typical child's day, and you might go, how many opportunities, you know, sit in those things. I think it would be a surprisingly small amount of minutes in a day, even in a week. But that meet them. But the next sentence is interesting. Children's playing must not be, and in quotes, adulterated by any adult or external agendas. Now that to me is interesting. I know it's not one of the principles outright, but that immediately struck me because the idea, I mean, adulterated is a strong word, and it immediately gets you like that feeling of like, I mean, you're going to go one way or the other, aren't you? You're either going to go, I'm not adulterating, I'm facilitating, I'm doing this, I'm pushing them on, I'm helping their learning, I'm extending, I'm doing all these things. Or you get that feeling of, you're right, I'm being perverse in putting myself in their play. They haven't asked me to come in, they haven't, you know, I'm just invading their space and whatever else. But
so interesting. And that, go on.
But I thought that was an interesting comparison to the forest school principle. Although we talk quite a lot about child-led, I think I could be right in saying that the actual phrasing is child-centred. We talked to this about when we talked to Tom Barden, and I think that's an interesting distinction in that, like we've said before, forest school can be child-led or child-centred. Learner-centred, there we go. So
it uses a range of learner-centred processes to create a community. I knew that word community was in there.
So that's the interesting thing, is that playworking has this kind of idea of like, you're there, but the best case scenario is that you're not there. Whereas forest, potentially maybe, but forest school, there is this spectrum that is all encompassing forest school between, you sit down and we're all going to learn firelighting today, and I've dumped all the resources around the woods, I will see you in 2 hours.
Well, I guess that's also where the kind of argy-bargy between Playwork and forest school comes, because if you are pure play worker, qualified in that's what you do, and you look at forest school from an outside perspective and go, you're basically bushcraft instructors teaching kids how to do this, and
pretending it's play work because you do 5 minutes of play or whatever. Yeah, that's and you can see that argument, can't you? If you're playworking, from what I understand, is so far on that end of the spectrum of non-invasive, non-adulterated things, that forest school, depending on where you sit on that forest school, because I think if there was a playworking police, right? And they came to see some of our sessions. I think some sessions, you come at a certain time and you might go, is this forest school? Is this playworking? What are you doing here? Because sometimes it drifts into that realm, but you might go and see, you know, even in the same, you know, you could come here at some points and we've got them all, we just go, oh, we're all going to communally cook. And that's a decision we've made as a group to go, we will all cook together because we're all going to eat together, or we'll all, you know, but if you're playworking, you go, no, you have adulterated.
Oh, I don't know. Well, there's a bit of a crossover I've just kind of noticed here about, like, in the forest school principles, there's quite a few references to, like, the kind of community aspect, and it involves all learners, and what was I gonna... Yeah, forest school aims to promote the holistic development of all those involved, fostering resilient, confident, independent and creative learners. And that, when you read about forest school, that often includes the leader. You know, you are reflective, you're learning, you're part of the community. That, yeah, you might know a bit more about certain aspects of the things you're going to do that day, or you've maybe planned a bit more, but you are included within that community. And in the Playwork principles, there's one that says that that it affects the playworker.
Playworkers recognise.
Yeah, here we go. Playworkers recognise their own impact on the play space, and also the impact of children and young people's play on the playworker. And I think that's quite a nice kind of crossover there. That actually you're talking about, like, being you know, you don't want to adulterate children's play, but you have to accept that your presence does affect the play, and that sometimes that is positive. I was remembering our the forum we went to last year in Somerset Play Forum with Dr. Peter King, and he was showing those diagrams. Do you remember?
Yeah, the play cycle.
About the play cycle, and about kind of little diagrams of adult interaction as well with that, and kind of how the proximity, and there's a lot of that in evolutionary playwork as well, about different types of playworker. Do you remember at the back? It's got, like, the playworker who is like the big kid going, come on everybody, we're doing this now, and then the playworker who
that's me until I get tired, and then I turn into the other playworker.
Yeah, there's one that's like, really negative, isn't there? There's one about, like, oh yeah, everything is just crap, and but
recognising yourself that you go, you're taking these things on. I'm going to do a really small aside, right, for people that might be like, this is, I think, why it was that it maybe touched a nerve with you, that someone called you, like, not a play worker and doing whatever. I don't know if anybody listening was at the Somerset Play Forum last year, but when the doctor was speaking and was doing his little play cycles, if you could have seen Gemma's little face, she was the only one in a room of play workers, because mostly it's like nursery workers and people who run holiday clubs, and it was quite an academic talk, and it was quite like a, you know, and here we see an instigation and a whatever, and then this comes back to here. And a lot of the room going, okay, but I need to know how to clean up pasta when it goes on the floor. And little Gemma next to it, like, if she could have got up and said, like, can you sign my face, she would have. At one point...
Yeah, teacher!
teacher! At one point he mentioned, what was it, the California report. Yeah. He just went like, has anybody heard of it? A room of statues, not a movement, except for, like, little Hermione Granger next to me, going like, oh, I have. Just
I know what the
Colorado, that was it. Just,
I know what a
had to
metalude
correct
is.
me even then.
I know what a metalude is.
Just
choose me.
absolutely loving
but
it.
But it's because I have not, you know, apart from my own research, I haven't had any contact.
I could see you were so excited.
I want the contact, you know, and the amount of times I've looked at, like, the Masters or PhD at Swansea University and all these kind of things, I go, oh, you know, I'll do that, but then it means your whole life is over and you can't do anything else, you're just doing that. And then you're, you know, like, brilliant, I've got this qualification, what do I do now? The same as I was doing before, but with more knowledge. But it's all learning,
and possibly less abuse on the internet, though.
But no, I think I'd still get the abuse on the internet, because they wouldn't know that I'd done that. I wouldn't go, hello, this is Gemma, PhD.
You could change it, put it as part of your surname.
I would still be hippie in the woods with the little... in fact, I might change my photo to the photo of the rusting VW camper covered in vines, which was hurled at me through the internet waves. Anyway, shall
we go through?
Yes.
So we hadn't actually even got to the playworker principles yet. What is it?
Playwork. Just playwork.
Playwork principles.
Yeah.
Gemma knows more about this than me.
Number one.
All children and young people need to play. The impulse to play is innate. Play is biological, psychological, and a social necessity. And I can't read. and it's fundamental to the healthy development and well-being of individuals and communities. The and communities bit is interesting.
Yes.
So I think this is an interesting bit where talking the forest school principles. If I was trying to relate, does that match exactly to one? Is that completely the antithesis of one? It's kind of interesting in that, like, forest school, I think, almost takes play as a given. If you read the forest school principles, in some way it's almost glazed over of just like, well, you'll do play to an extent.
Or do you think that that's your interpretation of it? Because I was just thinking about, so if you want, what is it called, accredited provider status or whatever it's called, recognised provider status?
Yeah, recognised provider. We are one, you should know.
I know, but I can't remember the terminology. With the Forest School Association, so when you have to submit all your documentation to get that status, you have to submit your plans, and it has to, and your plans have to include time for free play. Like, that has to be written on there, and that always kind of surprises me, because I also think it's just a given. Well, that will happen because I'm writing this plan, but I am, of course, not saying, of course, not all learners will be engaged in this activity at this precise time, because lots of them will be involved in their own free play, and that's their choice. Unless it's like a safety briefing or part of the session that I've gone, well, actually, this week, this group definitely all need to sit down and listen to this, or they all need to be involved in this.
They all need to play this game. To make it a community, maybe we need to play
this
game.
There's a strong reason, based on my own reflection and observation of that group, that they all definitely need to be involved in this, which is pretty rare for our sessions. But you could run Forest School very differently, and you might not take that for granted, like we do. Do you know what I mean about play? Whereas you could run it and go, oh, but I need to make sure I schedule in some time for free play, and they will have 20 minutes of it in this part of the session.
I was just staring at the roof because I was trying to work out whether there's something about that Forest School wiggle room of going, it's learner centred, as opposed to the play working intrinsically motivated, freely chosen, all those things, that it gives you some scope to kind of go, if you were going to take it to an extreme, you'd go, it's an I know what's best for you. But to pull it back to actually where I think we would apply it, you might go those things where you might not, I'm talking to a child now, you might not necessarily freely choose this activity for reasons of anxiety or for reasons of you're not unfamiliarity, you're not socially bonded yet.
You're too cold.
But you as a practitioner are going, I have some knowledge that makes me think if you do attempt this thing, then you will get a benefit out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were just going, well, if you don't freely choose it and bring it to me, then it doesn't arrive. Then I think there's an interesting discussion to be had about whether children can get stuck in schemas, right? We know that children can get stuck in schemas, and to go, there's an element of like, oh yeah, play through your schema, you do as much throwing as you want. But if a child just throws for like 4 years, you might go, okay, they need something else. There's something missing here.
There was an interesting discussion about that online, wasn't there? And that is an interesting debate to have. And also, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about, you might, in an ideal world, it's all very well. You just go, oh, they just arrive, they just turn up, and they would just play, and they would have unadulterated play. But there are other schools of thought that might say, well, actually, because of the very small amount of time per day that children are allowed to initiate their own activities, they don't know how. They may need a springboard. They may, they know how very easily to interact with a screen and how to navigate those kind of games. But when it comes to being in a completely outdoor environment with a bunch of kids that they may not have seen very often, and they're just expected to just magically play, and you're supposed to not adulterate that play and leave it alone.
You're asking for a car crash.
Yeah, for a lot of children, that's actually cruel, isn't it? It's like,
you're not setting them up to succeed.
No.
You go a child that maybe let's say a child that's only ever been to toddler groups with their parent, and then the first time they come to the kindergarten on their own, they might never have experienced a situation where there's a disagreement and they don't have like an adult who is entirely in their camp, or they don't have the skill to do a thing. So to interact with another child. So if you just always went, oh, it's okay, whenever something negative happens, Johnny runs away because he hasn't got that thing, rather than and instead of going, oh, maybe he needs some stuff put in place. Maybe he needs to practice it. Maybe we need to do some role play with him. Maybe, and not to say like you always know what's best for the kids. I think there's in forest school it kind of encourages that balance of do some observation, plan some stuff in, then almost
and then don't worry if your planning doesn't
yeah.
happen. If you've planned that and then you realise that actually that issue you thought was a major issue is not an issue today because they have had a bigger breakfast and the weather's different and they're in a better mood, and so you realise actually I don't need to do that.
That kid's not being a prick today.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that with adults sometimes. You go, oh, we can be best mates today, and then sometimes, not you personally, but then, you go like, oh, today, just not feeling it. Do you want to go for number 2?
Yeah, although I think we've talked about it already, really, because it's
kind of the freely chosen one, isn't it? Well, should we move to the third one?
Yeah.
Yeah?
3. The prime focus and essence of Playwork is to support and facilitate the play process, and this should inform the development of play policy, strategy, training, and education.
So, if I was going to link that to a forest school principle, my immediate reaction would be that it is the bit fostering a connection to a place and a community. I can't remember off the top of my head which. It's about it being in the same place, takes place in a woodland, support. Yeah, there you go. So developing a relationship, whereas play
with the natural world.
Yeah, whereas just developing play can be, for some children, a very solo activity. It can be a thing where they're just, and play can be just consuming. It can. It doesn't. Okay, here's the thing. Well, do you think you could repeatedly play in a space without developing any respect for it?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, Playwork won't have that connection to nature, and a lot of adventure playgrounds are in really urban areas. I mean, you see some of those like amazing old photographs.
Oh yeah,
of, like,
incredible places.
So the risk, that's a massive crossover there in terms of negotiating risk between forest school and Playwork. But there isn't that kind, and I guess maybe that's where the kind of like, oh, forest school is just like a bunch of hippies and bushcraft people. That kind of view might happen because you see these incredible adventure playgrounds in very urban areas, using a lot of loose parts that are made by people. It's less about sticks and stuff and more about old bits of stuff.
So do you think in that environment you would?
I don't know. I think in Playwork the users are encouraged to kind of take ownership of that space, and that Playworkers are there to help the children to develop that space in ways that they would like. So in that way, if you've been involved in drilling together part of an amazing climbing frame fort thing with tyres and bits of old wood, then surely you're going to develop a connection and a respectful relationship with that.
Well, I think one of the main... it's just struck me as you were describing those pictures, and I hadn't really thought of it before, but if you've got lots of man-made materials, you compared to a forest school in a natural setting, you're not playing with anything necessarily living. And I wonder if that is a differentiation that, like, by necessity we have to make. If your play need in an adventure playground is to kick the shit out of something, right? That's your play need right now, is to just go and kick it, kick it and kick it and kick it and smash stuff, right? You can kick metal pans, you can kick pieces of wood, you can kick whatever, there, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, and you're, and a play worker might look at that, I don't know, but a play worker might look at that and go, okay, we're fulfilling a play need, it's been freely chosen. If it breaks the resource, then the resource was a consumable that you needed to live out your play need. But in a natural setting, if your play need involved absolutely breaking and smashing stuff, that's more likely to impact on living creatures, living habitats. Snapping a holly tree is not a thing where you could go, I'm just saying that because I'm looking at a holly tree, is not a thing where I as a practitioner would go, well, if your play need was to snap stuff today, then I guess that holly tree that's been growing for 15 years was part of the consumable need that you had. For, that's not... Yeah,
and I'm sure there are Playwork spaces in...
I'm sure there are. I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive.
No.
I just was thinking about a comparison.
Yeah.
And again, and there'll be forest schools that have a lot more man-made stuff in. We've not got... Well, we've got some stuff as I look around.
mud kitchen stuff, buckets, and that is always a point where I have a little conversation with myself in my head, and like kids hitting trees. So like a large tree that's quite substantial, quite sturdy, and they're whacking it with a stick. And it's one of those things where you see them do it, and you're like, at what point do I step in? Do I like you're kind of, I don't know.
I get hit by a strong wave of empathy. I mean, that's my immediate reaction, is like empathy with the tree or with the living thing, where my immediate response is like, we mustn't hurt a living thing. And then I have to take it back and go, is it hurting the living thing? Is that stick, you're talking about a 2-foot diameter larch tree. Does it give a monkeys if some kid knocks it with a stick for 5 minutes? It's been here for 100 years or something.
And then you think, at what point do I say? And we were talking about this the other day, about we were telling children not to wrench plants out of the ground and snap stuff off, but we often do woodland management with them and give them secateurs and go and snip back holly that's growing across the path or that kind of thing, and that's an interesting paradox. Anyway, next one.
Yeah, the role of the play worker is to support all children and young people in the creation of a space in which they can play.
Yeah, so the creation of the space, that's kind of what I was talking about in terms of, you're developing that play space with the children, with you having up-to-date research, knowledge,
Now, this is a thing, sorry to jump in, but it's just occurred to me that this is a thing that I think a lot of forest school leaders would hold internally, is that the children need to be involved in creating the space. It isn't one of our principles, and I don't think it's mentioned in any way. But I think this is why, because some people find it difficult. you know when you see stuff in forums or on Facebook, and it comes up, and you go, "Whoa, that's a hot button issue. That's going to go." So I think this might be why people find it. One of the reasons people find those pre-made catalogue forest school setups. I was going to say offensive, but maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe that's too strong of a word.
Funny?
But I'm going to say offensive. You know the ones you see when it's like £400 for a log bench and then a lovely carved sign.
I know what you mean, but I always feel for those practitioners working in towns and cities where they really want to they're desperate to bring this ethos to the young people that live there, and they just don't have access to that stuff. Like
that's not what
that's not what you're going to say.
That's not. I mean, where I think I'm seeing it is when people, the sort of discomfort that I'm seeing is when people are having that put upon them. So they run the forest school area, and they go, my head teacher has invested in all of this. And
I have seen things like that.
I've not ever seen it verbalised or written down that people go, the children weren't involved in this, but I do think that's part of it.
Yeah, and even if they're not necessarily involved, you are thinking about their play needs first and foremost. So I've heard people say that the school spent £500 on an intricately carved oak storytelling chair for their forest school environment at the end of the school field, and that £400 or £500 could have been spent in
loose parts
in buckets, in tarps, in stuff that children can actually play with, and that's
an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I think if that was included as a forest school principle, you would see a lot more reflection, and it would. I mean, you could argue that it is covered in the learner-centered style, because you could say, well, the environment should be learner-centered, but it's not explicit, and that is something that I think a lot of forest school leaders would hold. I know you and I hold that view that the children. Most of what we can see around us was not the trees, but the buildings and the structures and stuff was built by the kids.
Or even if it isn't built by the kids, it's built by us in direct response to our observations of the children. So we spent all of last week completely overhauling the kindergarten space, and I think we had when we set up the kindergarten, we were very much like, we won't kind of label areas, and we won't prescribe that this type of play happens here and that kind of thing. We won't put too much in, because we're going to let the kids use the space, and we will develop it with them. If we through our observations see that they are
very high hopes,
often using this tree for this or this area for this, and blah blah blah. And to a certain extent that has happened, and to a certain extent some children needed other things, and so we spent a week doing that, but we could only really do that having worked there for a year and a half and observing the children in that space and knowing the children that we have very well.
And you could say that they have been involved in the space.
That's kind of what I mean.
That their needs have been communicated to us, and we have responded by going, you aren't able to drill this, put this together, put this thing, so I'm going to just put it in place. In the same way that they would communicate a need of, I'm thirsty, and we might go and get the water tank because they can't pick up the water tank. It's a similar thing of like, they're sort of communicating, this is my play need, and we go, right, well, I'll put that in place. And that's not to say, though, that, so we've labelled some stuff and put springboards up, but if we, in a few months' time, realise that the group don't need that or it's not working for them, we will take that down and change it. Definitely. Whereas that's, again, it's that thing, isn't it, of like a fixed pre-bought, the head teacher has spent X amount on this big wooden pirate ship. The kids aren't into pirates anymore, but it's still a pirate ship.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of it. Is it's static. You're not giving the children an opportunity to create their space.
Yeah.
You
and
know?
I think that's the same with resources. Like quite frequently, people ask the question about like, what I've got this budget. What are the most important things that I can buy?
Oh, who knows?
And it's that's an that's a difficult position to be in if you are setting up, because you're not going to know what you need until you know the groups you're working with. But some people aren't in that position. You know, they've got to start somewhere, and they've got to start with some basic kit. But I feel like we've been through so many learning experiences ourselves in terms of the resources that we've invested in, like the smaller things, you know, like paint, like our journey to decide what kind of paint we are going to use, if any, at what point, with who, all that kind of stuff, you know, and that comes from a learner-centered kind of reflection perspective, but also sustainability perspective and what works in our environment and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely feel there's a massive overlap there between Playwork and forest school, depending on what kind of forest school you run, but I think that's definitely...
I was just trying to think if there was anybody who, if I can think of any setting or person that I know who would disagree that that is a forest school thing, that they would say, no, that's exclusively playworking. Children don't or shouldn't have an impact on creating the space that they're playing in at forest school. And I can't think, I mean,
it's all, you know, if you're doing... A forest school is so much, I think, about providing opportunities for mastery play, and if you're enabling children to engage in mastery play, then they inevitably have an impact and effect on their play environment. You know, they are digging, they are changing it, they're dragging things from one
moving
to the
that bucket over there because they want to play with it in that tree instead today.
And they're just digging, shifting, picking things up, moving it around, affecting the natural environment. And that's going to happen whether it is a natural environment or not, if you let the children do it. It's just started to rain.
It has.
We skipped one.
Did we?
Yeah, we did. We skipped number 4. So we went to
Oh
number 5.
Yes, but 4 is important.
So 4 is, for play workers, the play process takes precedence, and play workers act as advocates for play when engaging with adult-led agendas.
So that's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's talking about not just being an advocate for play in the session, but also when you're having a budget meeting, a council meeting, when you're talking to parents, when you're... Do you think that is in the is that inherent in forest school? I can't think that
I don't think it is. No.
I can't think that it...
But it should be.
It can't think... Well, no, I don't... No, I disagree. I think that I think that it's good it's a good playworking principle, and I like that it's there for people who want to include playworking elements into their practice, because I think that's one of the things that could be an interesting way of people structuring. You know, everybody on their website has a bit where, for people that have never heard of forest school, everyone's got a page on their website. What is forest school, right? It would be really interesting to see people go, these are the 6, if you're a forest school association member, to go, these are the 6 forest school association principles, and these are the children of the forest principles. These are our like addendum ones. These 2 are from playworking. These 4 are from Steiner. These ones are from... And you'd go, right, these are the 6 core, right? Well, we can do the 6 core. What makes us different is that we've got this one and this one and this one and this... A bit like everybody making a... here's a metaphor for you.
What?
You ready? Everybody doing forest school has got a base and tomato sauce, right? and the toppings are the extra principles. Everybody is going, right, it's outdoors in a natural
But
environment.
I would disagree with you, because there are some people who do forest school but don't agree with the FSA, in the same way I was saying about the Playwork principles.
Yeah,
there are some people who are like, I don't agree with the FSA
Well, this is why I
don't want to do that. Thank you. No.
Well, that's why I prefaced it with, if you are an FSA member.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that part.
Yeah. I know how to not get abuse on the internet. You go, if you are an FSA member, you could start with the 6 and then add your own on top.
Yeah.
Or if you're not in the FSA, you could still go, I like 2 and 6, so I've got these for I don't know how copyright law works. Maybe you could lift them word for word, and just go, I do this and this, and I don't do this one, but I do this one, and I have got Montessori training.
I don't do it long term.
Well, no, I mean not.
I'm just going to leave that off.
Well, a lot of people don't do long term, or a lot of people can't do long term.
That's the one that most people struggle with. That's what I said.
Yeah. So, an interesting one there. But
being an advocate, I quite like that.
I just think it sounds like another hat to wear, and I already wear too many.
Okay.
And just at the point that you've
But I feel like
reached
you
me
are,
today on the
but
point.
you
I
are
am
an advocate
yeah.
for play within forest school. Like the amount of discussions we have with parents and the literature that we provide for them to read at sessions is all advocating for play. We have got a bit of paper laminated. Don't tell anyone.
Shh. It's fine.
Which talks about play being child-initiated, self-directed,
What's the
freely
thing-
chosen, bloody blah.
What's the thing that the British laws have to be written on? It's like a calf skin leather or something.
Vellum.
Vellum, right?
What is vellum?
Vellum.
Is it deer skin?
Might be, but that's what we're not gonna laminate anything from now on. We're gonna put it on
Find
vellum.
Dead squirrels.
Yes.
Like that squirrel we found the other day that had been skinned by an animal.
Squirrel vellum.
If anyone
right?
knows, all right, I think it's a bird of prey that has. We found 2 dead squirrels
We
in
did
one
find
day,
2
freshly
squirrels.
dead, but like skinned, so like
Professionally,
accurately, freshly skinned.
yeah.
Skin was still there, but all just rolled back, and the spine was just there.
This is where we find
It's
out that there's like a family of wild people, just humans, just a family of
Like
wild
that film,
humans.
Leaves No Trace.
Yeah, they're living in our forest school when we're not here.
Well, you
and
used to say that about the
we've caught
shelter,
them.
that every morning you come in and be
Oh.
like, hello, is anyone
Yeah.
sleeping in here now?
Yeah.
Ah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That's my thing. So that was my feeling. Is like an advocate for play sounds like an active role.
You are.
No. But what I mean is like if someone asks me, I advocate for play. But to say that one of my job roles is to advocate for play, it sounds like I would be doing outreach,
Right.
going to people who weren't interested and going, hey, let me tell you about play. Let me tell you about the good word of play. Let me tell you about our good Lord play. And, like, that's not what I want to do. What I like about forest school is that you can kind of go, this is what I'm going to do in my setting. And then you can, to an extent, leave it here.
Go home and eat pizza.
Go home and eat pizza with whatever, with squirrel vellum.
Okay. Do you want to read number 6?
Do I want to read? A Playworker's response to children and young people playing is based on sound, up-to-date knowledge of the play process and reflective practice. Now, you are showing me a forest school approach.
Number 5.
Forest school is run by forest school practitioners who continuously maintain and develop their professional practice. Now, that is interesting. So I think they're different.
I think they're different, but there's a similarity there.
There's a similarity there in that I think you would struggle now to find an organisation, any job role, that didn't include some sort of professional CPD and going, you are not just qualified once, we expect you to do X, Y, Z. I think that would be hard. Oh, I'm really racking my brains now. Gravedigger. If you are a gravedigger, once you're trained, you can dig a grave, mate.
Techniques in grave digging, but teaching-wise, budgets have been cut so badly that if you're trapped in a school at the moment, for a lot of teachers, when was the last time you did some CPD? Probably a while ago.
And some in-depth CPD that was focused on what you do. Because I would say when I was teaching, and I wasn't teaching for a long time, but I did some sessions of CPD that were like, not a catalogue, but an email comes around and you go, oh, talk for writing. I really want to do talk for writing. Dear head teacher, please can I go and do talk for it? And then there were some ones where they just go like, the academy has bought into this 3-day of training. All 600 of you are going to sit in a hall.
However relevant this is for you or not, I know, and it's just like so not in depth.
that would be an interesting thing. So I would say the only mass thing we have is in forest school is that we have a forest school first aid certificate, and that we all professionally maintain that. And so I would hope, I don't know, but I would hope that my forest school first aid here down in Devon is a very similar course, if not almost exactly the same as somebody taking it in Sheffield. And so if I went up to Sheffield, my first aid would be the same thing. But I don't know why I picked Sheffield. But there isn't anything else that it would be interesting if someone like the FSA put something out and went, this is the new theory of emotional development in the next 2 years. To maintain your forest school leader qualification, you must complete a course in this. And then, and they're just sort of drip feeding stuff through and going like, look, one of the ways of maintaining quality is that we put all this through. I'm not saying that this is what should happen, because I think part of what makes forest school interesting is that this person has specialised in Playwork and this person has, and I think if you started handing out those, we all must do it, you're forcing people who can't afford it to do it, but also you're homogenising, and I don't think that's a good thing.
And
I like diversity.
Being a bit patronising there and going, well, you can't, facilitate your own CPD, so we're going to tell you what to do. Give people a bit of respect.
But there is a fine line, isn't there? Because I think sometimes, like you say, it's hard to find playworking things. There is a fine line in the forest school community, I think, between if nobody advertised their CPD, then we wouldn't find each other to go, Tom and Simon do some great CPD on projectiles, or Lily does some rekindling, or, those things. They need to be promoted. But it can also feel very scummy to promote your CPD to other qualified leaders, and to go, hey, I think I know about whittling. Do you want to come and do whittling?
I find that really hard.
But if we don't do it, nobody knows about the CPD, and you're missing out on the people that can do it. So
you feel like that's what the local FSA meetups are really great for, is skill sharing. And I always, I never ever judge anybody who's delivering a skill share. I'm just really grateful that they're doing it, and I'm fascinated to hear how they do their whatever. But when it comes to me doing it, I'm always like, oh God, this is so cringy. Like, I really feel
bet everybody
like
already knows this already.
Everyone knows this, or they're looking at me and going, oh God, why does she do it like that? Which is ridiculous, isn't it? You should just be like, But then that goes hand in hand with someone saying, that's a nice top. And instead of going, thank you, you go, oh no, it's really ugly. I got it from a charity shop. It's 50p. It's so rank.
Well, maybe if you didn't buy rank stuff from a charity shop, I wouldn't have to say.
Funny.
Well, it does tie in, doesn't it? In that, like, I think that's one of the things that if we're going back to where we started on this, on the social media thing, it would be really interesting if we all approached social media posts with the idea that, like, that might be useful to someone, right? That might be relevant to someone. And so when you're looking at a thing, not going like, obviously we all get insured through this person, or slamming someone because they do or don't do something, and going, okay, there might be a couple of thousand eyeballs looking at this right now. Is what I'm about to put constructive and helpful, and also not about to smash the reputation of the person that's posted this thing? If it's like there's a difference, isn't there? There's a difference of, like, there's a technique thing, and you might go, oh, that's quite interesting. I have never done that because I'm always worried about this safety thing. Or, oh, I wouldn't, in our groups, we wouldn't do that with the kids, or we might always make the kids do that. And just, there's a difference between having a debate and then going, like, if this is what you do in your forest school, then whatever else, and just absolutely, like, not giving each other the benefit of the doubt and going, we don't wear gloves, right? We wear gloves when we're cold, but we don't wear them for tools. But there are lots of people that do, and whenever it comes up, there's this big... sometimes it's a healthy debate of, like, oh, well, these are the pros and cons, this is why we do it. And sometimes it's like, your trainer was rubbish then if they told you to do this. Or, like, we just need to... It's one of the things that is difficult about the online forest school community, is fear of posting anything that you might think is completely positive. You might just go, oh, I'm doing this thing, or hey, my group did this today, and just like if you've got something maybe maybe we'd all be better off, right? They have this wonderful feature where you can just message people privately,
Yeah.
right? So you can just send someone a quiet little message and go, oh, I don't know if you knew, but there's a kid in the background of your thing and they're cutting towards their leg. It might be worth taking that photo down, right? Rather than loudspeaker on, going, you're a bad person!
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah.
quietly message each other. We can have these conversations. What is it? It's criticise in private, praise in public.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Lovely. Anyway,
And
off my high
yeah,
horse.
no, but I'm completely with you. And in terms, if nothing else, just thinking about like the mental health of the person, like you know, I just feel like people forget that. They forget that shit because things that happen online can really like whittle their way under your skin, and you can brood on that for a long time.
I thought whittle was a pun.
Oh, I see. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, just be kind.
Be kind. Be a nice person. So we talked about number 7, recognising your own impact on the play space and the impact on the playwork, the young people's play on the playworker.
Yeah, that previous one about the up-to-date knowledge of the play process. Reflective practice, that's in the forest school
Yeah, absolutely.
stuff. Reflective.
And I think that's something that the
Good job,
FSA is working on. I've seen increasingly when we've been doing our renewals as a recognised provider that the CPD is a bit more structured. They want to know what and why and what you got out of it and all these things. And you know, they're just by putting a bigger weight on it in the form.
Reflection
and CPD.
Oh, sorry.
It then makes you go, oh, okay, this is it's almost showing where your priorities are. The FSA is going, and we want to know more about your CPD because that's an important part. And if it's just an empty text box and you can put 2 sentences of like, I have done CPD, I have learnt new things. You know, they want to. You know, they want to go. Oh, okay, let's dig in about it.
Within the Playwork community, there was an interesting thing about the knowledge and understanding of the play cycle. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I remember you getting excited.
So Pete King talking about understanding of the play cycle amongst the Playwork community, and he did this study and wrote this book, which I haven't read yet. Need to read it.
Do you need to read it?
So updating Gordon Sturrock's kind of definition of the play cycle with his blessing before he died, so you know, he did this research understanding of the certain terms like metalude and all the rest of it, and found such discrepancies in both awareness and understanding and interpretation of it. It's like this is getting really watered down. You know, these are people who are describing themselves as play workers or
There's this woman online called Gemma. She said she's a play worker. It's ridiculous. Who wrote a whole book to fix it.
how dare she? And I think that's almost like what you're saying about like everyone should. What if the FSA was like everyone should undertake training in these areas, or everyone should have an understanding of this, and then how do you do that? How do you facilitate that? You know, and
Well, I guess that's part of, isn't
delivering
it? Is
different
the
things.
FSA is moving. I don't know if they're again, not knowing much about the playworking community. I don't know if there was an awarding body that did whatever. But I think part of what the FSA is trying to do with picking, going, this is an accredited qualification and this one isn't, is kind of going, well, this qualification involves some child development theories, and if your qualification didn't, I think the FSA would go, well, that's not what we want, you know.
Very true.
So maybe that's where the base knowledge comes in.
Yeah.
We talked about the impact of the children and young people's play on the play worker.
So the last one.
Play workers choose an intervention style that enables children and young people to extend their play. All play worker intervention must balance risk with the developmental benefit and well-being of children.
So I guess that is kind of what we were talking about before when we were saying, would a play worker let a child kick the shit out of a thing, because they're going, there's a risk here, possibly to themselves, possibly to the environment, and going, but how do I balance that with developmental? A fly has landed on your face. How do I...
like I've died. They filmed. They always do that.
I didn't like crawl over your eyeball or anything.
Yeah,
it was
that's
just
what
on
I
your
was gonna
face.
say. I didn't even feel it. Little nutty things.
Anyway, do you know what it is? It's because
What?
your face is so hairless, right? That you didn't have any... If a fly landed on my face, I would know intrinsically where it was, because
it's one of your hairs,
because of
which
which
has got its own
beard.
brain.
Yeah, this is apparently why mosquitoes kill less men, because because we've got more body hair.
They don't like the hair.
So no, when
You
they
feel
land,
it?
we can feel it, and we
Oh.
get rid of it. Anyway.
Right, so I knew there was a reason for not shaving my legs. See, it's healthy.
When was the last time you got malaria?
Exactly.
Exactly, mate.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I did shave my legs recently though, so maybe I've, opened up the risk. So you should be the opposite, right? You should, because, I don't shave my legs in winter, but that's not when I'm going to get malaria. I'm not going to get malaria in this country anyway. Never mind.
You alright?
Yeah.
Intervention style is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it doesn't dictate one, and this isn't something that the forest school principals have, really.
No.
That I can think of. They don't have a thing that says. But then that relates back to forest school isn't saying the minimalist intervention is what we're going for,
No.
and therefore the follow-on isn't choose the least intrusive style. Forest school is going.
Or choose the way that's not going to adulterate the play.
Yeah. Forest school is, in theory, quite happy with adults adulterating the play. That's a controversial thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Forest school would be perfectly well done if an adult spent 2 hours adulterating children's play.
Yeah. As long as there was some free play at some point.
Well,
How do you define free play?
So I was just imagining then, if you said it's free play, but whatever you do, I'm going to come and play it with you.
Yeah.
You are definitely adulterating the play. If you then said to a group, what do you want to play? Do you want to play this or do you want to play this? And they all went, we want to go and play this. Say they wanted to play restaurants in the mud kitchen, and you went, cool, and you went over and you immediately set up, in the restaurant, and you started cooking, and then giving them that's adulterating the play, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an interesting kind of. So that would be perfectly fine for a school, or no?
Do you know what? Sorry, I am listening to you, but I'm also.
You're not really.
I am.
No
With
one
one
is.
ear.
If you're listening to me, you are the only one. Right? I'm
With
sat
one
next to
ear,
Gemma,
I'm
she's not
listening to you,
listening to me.
and with the other part of
If
my
you can
mind,
hear me.
shut it. I'm listening to you now. But with the other part of my brain, I am just scrolling through the forest school principles and the little bullet points underneath them, and looking actually for the word play. And I can't find it.
Oh my God, it's not there.
The actual
Guys, it's not
word
there.
play isn't there. Oh, yes it is. Got it. Play. Got it. Sorry. Apologies, FSA. Number 6 in the learner-centered processes, blah. But if you just read that, you just go, forest school uses a range of learner-centered processes to create a community for development and learning. And you
Is
go,
it in a
okay.
bullet point
But then
rather
it's
than
in a bullet point
right.
underneath. The bullet points are very good, by the way. They're more recent. I like them.
I like them as clarification.
They're very good. But then they're too lengthy to have on your own website, I find. Otherwise, someone would be... You have a link to this page, but who's going to read it? No one. Play and...
Us.
Yeah, but I mean parents and just general people wanting to know.
General
about forest
people.
school. Play and choice are an integral part of the forest school learning process, and play is recognised as vital to learning and development at forest school.
So, what I think is interesting there, though, is there a follow-on description of what play is? So that's kind of where there's open to interpretation. We did play. We played shops. We did play. We played a game where we all had to name a bug. We played. It's interesting to know whether that is an assumed thing by the people who wrote the principles, who kind of conglomerated the principles, I guess. Whether it was an intentional, we're going to put play but not define it, or whether because they couldn't agree amongst themselves, or whether they all agreed what play was and therefore took it to. So I'd imagine that Lily's background in play. I can't remember if Lily was one of the people involved. But so Lily is going to have a strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lily. If you don't know what play is, you give me a ring and I'll let you know.
We should do another podcast with Lily talking about play.
I think that's another one to get in. But you know what I mean. So someone writing it might have such a strong kind of well, of course we know what this is, that you forget to put it in, and then years down the line, you go, there is no play, or there's adulterated play, or
because you could put in that intrinsically motivated, freely chosen.
Yeah, it wouldn't take much.
You could put that
it
sentence
wouldn't take
into
much.
that bit, which would clarify maybe slightly more.
And
play
that would
and
be.
choice.
So we've said before that the principles are really good as a shield from top-down changes that you don't like.
Yeah.
As a practitioner, you can go, well, if we want to follow the Forest School Association, then we can't have different groups of children every 6 weeks, and we're not allowed to do this or whatever. And actually, if you put in just a couple of sentences that defined play from the awarding body, from the Forest School Association, I'd be interested to see how people used that to take to leadership, to take to councils, to take to organisations and go, and that either that would be the bridge where a playworking community said, oh, thanks, Forest School has taken this thing. Or they would go, Forest School has taken this thing. One way or the other, I think we would reach some kind of, either the world would explode or...
I would love to, I know Lily has come from this background, but I would love to engage in more dialogue with people in the Forest School community who started as play workers or who do both, simultaneously, and how their practice differs in different environments. I would love to know more about it. People who have had the benefit of having proper playwork training, what did that involve? What was that like? I've never spoken to anybody about
Will you
that
train
before.
Gemma? Will you train me? Please.
Any good books you recommend?
Books would be good.
Books would be good
to share.
Yeah.
Right.
Send us an email. Whatever. Oh, do you want to talk about your...
I do.
thing?
So, really sinister. Do I want to talk about my thing? I do want to talk about my thing. If you are in the FSA and in the UK, it is currently the beginning of March. I can't remember what day it is now. It's the 6th of March today. And by the 15th of March, we are electing new directors of the Forest School Association.
Well, not necessarily new.
Well, some
Might be
new.
Some old ones.
Well, anyway. I am standing my name is in the hat as a director for the Forest School Association. So if you haven't already got the email, then go and have a look at the website. It's one of these, what's the word? It's like preferential. So you just list the people in order.
You have to send an email.
You have to send an email. You list us in order. There are 7 places and there's only 6 of us applying. So, you can put those people in whatever order. And I think it's all going ahead. If you're not sure what an FSA director does, it's not a role of like, oh God, Lewis is going to be in charge and he's going to immediately burn down all the schools. It's it's checks and balances and just being a part of it and being a representative. So I think it would be a good thing to vote, and hopefully if I do get elected in and become one of the directors, then it might mean that there's more things that we can disseminate through the podcast and that we can chat through and we can have different people on. So yeah, have a look through your emails or go to the Forest School Association website, and it's all on there on how to email. Otherwise, I think we're done.
Yep.
I'm ready to go home now.
Yeah, I'm cold.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.